So I guess just to get started, can you just give us kind of an overview of the types of transactions that you have going through workflow and kind of an overview of what Loves is doing and how they're using our systems?
Sure. Here at Loves, I manage a group of about 32 associates. It includes 3 supervisors, 1 workflow system administrator, P-card administrator. We just introduced virtual pay, so we've got a virtual pay administrator, plus all the vendor master data now resides with my department. So we process invoices and payments for about 39 different companies within Loves. Our ERP system is currently SAP, and we have about 8 interfaces that feed into our ERP system. A couple of them being one is workflow and one is our new P-card and out-of-pocket reconciliation system. We use checks, ACH wires, and now virtual payments to pay our suppliers. And we also manage a company purchase card and travel program that carries an additional about 40,000 transactions a month, and we have about 1,800 cardholders.
Right, so you just have a couple things going through your system. Just kidding.
Yeah, just a few. Just a few.
Perfect. So can you just kind of take us back to the beginning of when you guys first called us and kind of what your pain points were and what you guys were looking for and maybe why you decided to contact ICG?
Well, when I first started at Loves, we had right at 150 locations across the United States. And this last week, we celebrated our 500th store. So we've more than tripled our locations in the last 12, 13 years that I've been here. And when I walked in the door as an AP manager, I was greeted with the fact that they were still doing everything with paper. So that meant we got mail every day. We opened up envelopes. We separated them out. We put them in intercompany envelopes, mailed them out all across the company. People would literally sign them with an ink pen, send them back to us, and we would batch them and pay them. And as you can imagine, we constantly struggled with lost invoices, duplicates, because if a vendor called you and wanted to know if an invoice was paid, and it hadn't been returned to our department and actually keyed into the system, you didn't have any idea if you had received it or not. So we would request another copy. So now you may have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of that same invoice floating all over the company. And it literally was a constant fire drill when I first started here. So something had to change. And that's what prompted my first researching out, trying to find a service provider or a software package that would help me digitize invoices so that we could at least get control of them.
That makes complete sense. Can you just talk a little bit about, how your duplicate check process has improved and how that's helping you guys?
Well, fortunately for us, we now scan our invoices into workflow system, or we have electronic EDI images that bring invoices in, or we can download information from a vendor's website and bring those invoices in. And then ICG built us a whole bunch of dupe checks that check various things. So we check vendor number, invoice date, invoice amount. We check all kinds of different ways within the workflow system itself. And it's really good at catching duplicates or what it thinks is a potential duplicate, and it sends it to an exception queue so that we can research it and see if it really is a duplicate or not. Then once we make the decision, the call, whether it's a duplicate or not a duplicate, that information is sent over to our new ERP system, which is SAP, and some additional duplicate checks are done within SAP, and it's pretty amazing that we don't find very many duplicates once the workflow file uploads into SAP. So workflow does a really good job of catching duplicates for us, because as we all know, vendors are going to email invoices in, they're going to send them in with paper, they're going to email them to individuals, and all of those usually culminate into the workflow system. So we're very happy with our duplicate check.
Misti, this is Jim again. I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned SAP a couple times, and I know originally when we started with Loves, you guys were on a different back-end platform, Infinium. I know people always get very fearful when it comes time to switch out back ends and how that's going to affect all our applications. Could you just talk a little bit about how that process went when you switched to SAP and transitioning that workflow and AP processing from the Infinium over to the SAP platform? How did that process go for you guys?
Sure. That's a great question because it was a very scary time, even for me. But we did put in, when we originally put in workflow, we were on Infinium. And then the decision was made to retire Infinium, and we actually purchased SAP as our new ERP software. So as a result of that, all of our chart of account numbers had to change, all of our location numbers had to change, and all of our department numbers had to change. And I don't know how many people have actually worked on SAP, but it is very complicated. It's far more complicated than most accounting softwares. So we were a little bit fearful of introducing that out into the people outside of the accounting office. In other words, people who were approving invoices or researching invoices. So what we decided to do in the beginning was to leave workflow as it was, as it had always been. The numbers didn't change for them. The GL numbers didn't change. The location numbers didn't change. And what ICG did is they came in and they took our new chart of accounts as well as our new location and department numbers, and they made those if statements. So if it was this, it is now this, and changed all of that for us on upload. So in the workflow system, it still appeared that we had the same GL account numbers and location numbers, but it flipped it over when it loaded it into SAP, and it actually posted in the SAP system with the correct coding on it, which made my life a whole lot simpler.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's good information for a lot of people that are going through that process that get very frightened about that whole endeavor.
Exactly.
Well, it's not fun, but it worked really well for us. We have since gone back and done what we call remediated workflow. But even when we did that, we did it a little bit differently because instead of having GL account numbers or location identification numbers, ICG built us what I call, I don't know what they call it, but what I call it is a smart search. So if you're in the GL account number box and you're wanting to charge something to supplies, you actually just start typing the word supplies and it brings up a list of possible categories, and you select one. And on the screen, you don't actually see what GL account number that is, but it actually pulls the GL account number in the background. So we're actually using the real SAP location numbers and GL account numbers and company codes and all of that. But our end users, the people who actually get in there and code invoices, don't really have any idea that that's happening, which made the transition a whole lot easier because I still get calls. I got a call yesterday saying, how do I put repair and maintenance into the system? And I don't know the new GL account number. And I say, just type repair and maintenance. And so it really has made a world of difference and made things for the people out in the field a lot easier for them.
Perfect. Yep, and I know that talking to you guys and everybody over there, that definitely seems to be the most beneficial. The ease of the applications and makes it user friendly. And doesn't require a lot of training or anything like that. So.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about those couple years ago when you first came to Love's and everything was paper-based and you guys decided to start looking for solutions. Were you guys of the mind that you were trying to find something out of the box? Were you guys trying to build something internally, or kind of what were you looking for? And then I guess what kind of made you narrow it down to ICG as well as a couple other vendors? And can you just kind of go through that process?
Well, yes. I've been in the payables arena for right at 38 years. And I have worked for profit companies, non-profit companies, public companies, private companies. I've worked for all kinds of different companies, and I've gone through several different software changes and learning different software packages. And the number one thing that I learned is that salespeople are just salespeople. So they're going to come in and they're going to make you think that they can deliver whatever it is that you're talking about. And what I've learned from my years of experience is they really only give you two options. And one is pay us a lot of money to customize things the way you want it, or change your processes to do it the way we built the software. And so as you're talking to all these salespeople, that's the sense that you get. And if you can read between the lines, you know that that's what's going to happen. And I hate people who come in and say, well, that's not standard in our software package. I absolutely hate that saying. And when I first talked to ICG, what I really was impressed with was they were not asking me or not showing me their software. What they were doing is asking me, how do you process invoices? What types of invoices do you have? What kind of approvals do you do? They really were digging into the weeds of my processes, and then they gathered up all this information and they went away and they came back and they said, okay, here's what we have for you. And there was never a time where I would say, oh, but we have this process. How are we going to manage that? And the answer was always, I can do that. We can do that. We can fix that for you. So we really walked away with a customized software package that was built exactly for our needs and has been built on since then for any additional needs that have popped up since we went live. So my biggest thing is your software package has to be flexible, or you have to be prepared to change your processes to make it fit their software package. And with the company that I work for now, they are family owned, family grown. They started out with one store in 1964. And even though we're a bigger company now, they still like the feeling of functioning like a small company. So we have to be very selective about software packages that we buy, because we have to be cautious of how it is going to be culturally accepted, because we don't want a huge culture change around here. So we don't want to beat somebody over the brow and say, well, I know you've done it that way for 30 years, because we do have employees that have been here 30 and 40 years. We want to be able to say, hey, this is how you've always done it, and you're going to continue to do it. It's just going to be electronically now instead of on paper. So that was a big benefit when I met with ICG for the first few times.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about kind of where we all started together, and then how we've kind of grown together over the last few years. So we keep referring to everything as workflow, which is basically your non-PO AP approval system. So I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about that, and then kind of all the other basically systems or different kind of various workflows that we've added throughout the last 10 years.
Yeah, we started out with workflow, which is true. It is our non-PO payables. But we have them divided up in different segments. So we have expense reporting in there, and we have billboards, and we have repair and maintenance, and we have freight. And so we have different doc types in there because of the routing rules that we have and how we need to handle those invoices. And once we got that all settled in and got everybody rolled on it and everybody was kind of used to it, we started realizing that there was a lot of value in workflow and the way that we could have the system customized for us. And so we could use it for various other things. So the first thing that we rolled on after workflow were our store audit invoices. So it takes our data that comes from the store. So the stores enter their invoices into their system, their back office system, and it feeds that data over every night. And ICG captures the pieces of that data that they need, brings it into what we call our store audit application. And then we send invoices into that same application. And the ICG application actually compares the data that the store entered to the invoices that were entered here in the corporate office, and we only audit by exception. So if it finds an invoice with a different invoice number or a different invoice date or different invoice amount, it masks all the ones that matched, and we actually only look at the ones that are exception-based. which, as you can imagine, going from 150 stores to 500 stores, that volume of invoices has significantly increased, but we really haven't increased our employee, our headcount, our FTEs in that area as significant as you would expect it to be. So we took that same theory, and when we started building tire shops, and we have about 300 tire shops now, we used that same process for our tire shop invoices. So we have another system that the tire shops use, and they enter their invoices into their back office system, and ICG grabs that data again. Same process. It looks at invoices that we've either downloaded from a vendor's website or actually scanned into the system and captured the header level data. And we again are only auditing exception-based invoices. And I can tell you for a fact that in that tire shop automation, we get an 80% match rate. So we are only auditing 20% of those invoices, and there are thousands every single month. So it's been a huge help for us. And when I first started here, we had a purchasing card program, and literally I downloaded all of the transactions off of the bank's website every single month, and I manually put them into a spreadsheet, and I manually coded every single one of those transactions. And it was very painful. So we got with ICG to do a P-card reconciliation system for us. They pull in our data, they match it up to our HR files, who the cardholder is, what the location number is for them. They look at the MCC codes and automatically assign our GL accounts for us. And it has a whole bunch of requirements built in there, like items that need receipts attached. Everything requires a business purpose. And they built all of those specifications for us, and it has really impacted my life personally, because I'm not having to manually do that anymore, and now we're up to 40,000 transactions a month. So it would be virtually impossible for me to do that without the system we use that came from Workflow or ICG.
Okay. So once we put Workflow in and all these other systems, I know that initially it was not well received because, like, as you mentioned, you have people there who have worked there 40 plus years and they like their traditional way of doing things. Do you have any examples of maybe someone or some team that we've kind of changed their mind and their tune a little bit?
Absolutely. So we have a group, and actually when we started on Workflow, we put our documents in phases. So we went for the easy ones first, where we could get the big bang, right? So the first one that we put in was billboards. And the reason we chose billboards is because they're kind of a no-brainer invoice, right? They don't move. They're the same amount every month. You know where they belong. You know who to charge them to, and you know what GL account to use. So that was the easy one. So we did those first, and then we moved on to ones that were specific to payables. For example, expense reports. So nobody but payables touches those expense reports, so that didn't have to go out in the field anywhere to be approved. They come in pre-approved, and we kind of moved on to those. And we went through all of those different doc types like that, one at a time, just adding little bits at a time, always putting off our R&M invoices because, one, they're the biggest volume. They're our biggest volume of invoices, and the lady that runs that department has been with the company 30 years, and she was my biggest naysayer. It's not going to work. You're going to lose all of our stuff. We're going to lose control. We're never going to be able to find anything. And she absolutely was opposed to the whole situation. As a matter of fact, I have a funny story about that. The day she kind of knew she was going to go live, and so she held invoices actually for 30 days. So on the Monday that she was supposed to go live, that Friday, she walked into my office and she says, okay, we're going to go live. So here, I saved some invoices for you. And she literally handed me an entire paper box full of invoices that she had been holding, because she was bound and determined that this process wasn't going to work for her. Well, not to be outdone, I got 2 or 3 or 4 of my girls to come in on Saturday and Sunday, and we scanned that entire box of invoices and we entered all of the header level data. And when she walked in on Monday morning, they were all sitting in her queue waiting for her to approve them. So,
I love that.
Now that being said, move forward, 10, 12 years, however long we've been on workflow, and she is now probably my number one cheerleader. She wants to put everything in workflow. Everything has to go through workflow because she's realized that there's audit tracking capabilities. So when somebody says, why did you charge this to my department? She can look on there and say, well, I didn't, you changed it. Or why is this invoice not approved? She can look and we put notes on them and say we're not approving it because, there's missing pieces or the work wasn't completed. There's just a whole host of information that's out there that is available to her at the touch of a button now that wasn't before. It was a lot of phone calls back and forth to the store. Where's this invoice? How come you haven't paid it? And now it's all right at her fingertips instantaneously. So not only has she gained benefit from that, as has everybody in the company, but she's also got KPI reporting now. So she can pull reports and tell you how many invoices each one of her clerical associates has worked every single day. So she sets goals for them every year. You do 300 invoices a week or whatever, and then she can track those, and you get real live numbers. So it's not just a guess of how many invoices your clerks are doing. And she really, truly has become my number one cheerleader. And it's kind of funny now. We laugh about it because I proved her wrong.
Love it.
Yeah, Misty, this is Jim again. I just wanted to ask you, sounds like a lot of, incredible changes out there have really benefited your department. But how does senior management perceive, executive management perceive what you guys have accomplished down there? Is it noticed? Is it recognized? And what's the feedback you get from them?
Oh, I think it's definitely recognized. I think they all see the benefit of it now. It's been around for so long now that it just is kind of, there. It's a system that everybody's dependent on. The interesting thing is that anytime we have something new come up and I suggest, hey, let's get ICG to build it for us, everybody wants to talk about return on investment, and they don't even really ask about return on investment when ICG is concerned, probably partially because we went through the SAP project, which was incredibly expensive, and when you compare it to what ICG can do for us and the cost, it's just not even comparable. It's just two different worlds. But it's really highly received, and they appreciate, especially with our P-card program, I'm able to pull reports out of there and give them to upper management and say, these people worked their transactions, these people didn't work their transactions, and they actually call me during the month and go, hey, I want to know about these transactions. Can you pull me a report? And of course I can. I can go into workflow and I can pull a report, or I can go into the P-card reconciliation system and pull a report, and I can provide them information instantly. So I think they definitely are appreciative of that fact. And also, we always talk about full-time employees, and my department really hasn't grown other than adding, like we just added master data to my group. So that was a couple of people but not because we needed 2 more people to do more work, just because we got a new department. And we haven't grown in a while, and as a matter of fact, we've probably shrunk by 1 or 2 full-time associates just by attrition because the system just functions for us really well.
That's pretty impressive, especially given the explosive growth you've had over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. All right, so kind of wrapping up here. So can you kind of talk about maybe future visions or future plans that Loves has and things that they want to do, both maybe inside and outside of workflow, and what you guys are looking for?
So within workflow right now, I think probably our next project that I see, our next big project, other than little tiny projects that are coming up, because we've always want to tweak and make changes to every process that we have. But our big one that's coming up is probably going to be our vendor portal. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a portal where if a vendor wants to become a new vendor with us, we're going to send them to a web page. They're going to self-sign on and self-manage their own sign-on. There's going to be some screens out there where they're going to have to fill out required pieces of information, which is going to include their federal tax ID number, and remittance address, and all that kind of stuff, banking information, all of that information that you want to know about a vendor. And then the system's going to automatically go out and do the TIN match for us on the IRS website, as well as the OFAC check, which we've been doing that for every single vendor for years now, but it is very manual for us. We do every single one at a time. And so I think getting a vendor portal is going to be a big deal for us. And not only that, but we have a guy that works for us here that built us a system that will take that information out of workflow when it comes over, and it will automatically set those vendors up in SAP, which is going to be amazing because we do about 150 adds and changes to vendors every single week. And getting rid of that and the time that is spent to do that is going to be absolutely amazing, and I'm really looking forward to that. We're not going to get rid of a full-time employee, but we're going to obviously direct her to more important duties, because typing in vendor information is as important as it is. It's just mundane, right? It's just typing in information. Right. So I'm super excited about getting that one up and off the ground.
As am I. I'm very excited for you guys to get that too.
Well, and not only that, but your vendors will be able to go out there and look up their own payment information, right? And that's something else that we do. I've done it twice this week, gotten emails and said, hey, I need a remittance advice, and I lost it or I can't find it. And so I've had to run them and email them the remittance advices. And it's going to be nice to be able to go, well, go over to your vendor portal. You can find it yourself.
Right.
In a nice way.
Of course. In the nicest way possible. Leave me alone.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
All right, last question for you today. So we know that there are a lot of people out there kind of in your similar situation, or maybe in the situation you guys were years and years ago. Do you have advice for them, things that maybe they should definitely look for? I know you've mentioned a couple things, or even things to avoid, or things that you would do differently than how Loves went through the process?
Well, I think anytime you start down this road of looking, there's just so many people out there now. I go to the AP conference every year, and that sales floor, that showroom floor is just full of people that say they will process invoices for you. And look how easy our system is. And it probably is, but I think the number one thing, I'm going to repeat it again, is look for somebody who's flexible, and look for somebody who is going to come in and really understand your processes and really try to match something with your processes. And maybe they notice something that you're doing wrong, or not wrong, but maybe they have an easier way for you to do it, and they'll make those suggestions to you. I really think you've got to do that. Not only that, but I'm going to suggest that you go talk to their customers, that you do an on-site, feet-on-the-ground research with their customers. What is their customer service like? What kind of after hours do they offer service-wise? How quickly do they take a production issue? If your system is down, how quickly do they respond to get it back up? And all of that is important because it's all what we call around here customer-facing. And when we say customer-facing, I'm talking about internal employees, right? Mm-hmm. But if the system's down, I get a nasty gram or I get a call from somebody saying, hey, I'm trying to approve invoices and the system's down. And, how quickly can your provider respond? The one thing I like about ITG is I never have to call and put in a ticket and get assigned a ticket number and wait for my ticket to be updated. I send an email or I make a phone call and say, hey, something's wrong, the system's down, can you guys get on and check it? And within minutes, it's always back up. So I think that's really important when you're looking at these invoice processing systems. You've got to have personal attention, and they have got to be flexible for you.
Fantastic. Well, Misty, we really appreciate your time. You've been fantastic. I think our audience was really going to appreciate the information you shared. So, a lot of knowledge there and a lot of experience, and really appreciate your time. So, on behalf of the audience and all of us at ICG, we really appreciate you as a customer. Appreciate your time today, and thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Thanks.